People who have met their online friends, what made you instantly regret it? Story 1. After years of virtual interaction, my brother finally met the girl he'd been talking to, only to find that her physical reality of her was a far cry from her online persona. As they tried to make an awkward conversation, the girl mistakenly sent a message to my brother that made it seem like she thought he was interested in her in a physical way. He was so taken aback that he showed her the message, and the look of shock and disgust on his face left her embarrassed and horrified. Story 2. I've never expected to make a real connection through Minecraft, but that's exactly what happened. I complimented a girl's skin and we started talking. She was American and I was Polish, which made it a bit tricky since my English wasn't great. We moved to Skype, and with her help, I slowly started to improve my language skills. We were best friends for almost a year, and I'd stay up all night talking to her and the friend she introduced me to. She was dealing with depression, and she was the first person who ever truly listened to me. We had plans to visit each other, and then, tragically, I found out she had taken her own life. 4 years have passed since then, and although it's still painful to talk about, I'm finally able to do so without crying. Story 3. I remember the day I met the guy from a different high school in a local chat room like it was yesterday. We had an instant connection, and our conversations in the chat room made me excited to meet him in person. I was so shy that when I saw him come into the store I worked at with a friend, I'd hoped he would introduce himself, but he never did. My heart sank when they paid for their things and left without a word. After my shift, I waited up for him for an hour, but he never showed. I now realize that must have been him, and it's my one regret that I didn't introduce myself to him when I had the chance. Story 4. I had known her for only 4 or 5 months, but when I decided to take a flight to meet her, I felt like I had known her forever. She had been a great support to me during a difficult time in my life, and I was eager to finally meet her in person. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. She was smart, cool, and someone I wanted to be around. But on the second day, she suddenly revealed that I wasn't what she had expected. I was taken aback. I'd been completely honest with her before we'd met, so I was confused as to why she felt this way. We stopped talking and eating together, and instead of watching Jackass on TV in the hotel at night, we would just go straight to sleep. I tried to fix the situation, but I never really got to the bottom of it. We eventually parted ways, exchanging a few texts before never speaking again. Story 5. I had the pleasure of working with an incredibly attractive and incredibly flirtatious woman at the time. We both happened to be avid players of World of Warcraft, and so she invited me to join her server. As a young adult, I eagerly accepted her invitation. We had a great time playing together and slaying players in PvP. When summer rolled around, there was a company barbecue. To my surprise, she had brought one of our PvP partners with her to the event, her husband. Unbeknownst to him, I had been virtually sexting her in the game for the past 3 months right in front of him. Story 6. We were brought together by a thrilling game of Dead by Daylight. He seemed delightful and amiable, and we thought he was a perfect fit for our gaming group. Little did we know, he had a secret agenda. He had fallen for one of us, and soon enough they started a long-distance romance. He even flew to meet her in person, the ultimate sign of commitment. Unfortunately, this romantic gesture quickly revealed itself to be a terrible mistake. He turned out to be a controlling, narcissistic manipulator who constantly degraded my friend and loved to play mind games with us. After a few weeks of enduring his toxicity, we decided to stop playing with him. My friend had a tough time breaking away from him, but eventually she mustered up the courage to do it, and she's doing so much better now. Story 7. One of the most memorable friendships I've ever had was with one of the funniest and liveliest people I've ever met. He lived about 200 miles south of me in the south of England. We would talk and play Counter-Strike 1.6 together for years, and he always managed to bring a smile to my face. Unbeknownst to me, he was dealing with an incurable and debilitating disease, muscular dystrophy. His condition started by paralyzing his legs and worked its way up to his arms and eventually his lungs. I was unaware until a few days ago before I had arranged to visit him for the first time. Despite this, my desire to see him only intensified. Sadly, I only saw him twice in real life before he passed away about a year later. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it to his funeral, which I deeply regret. Story 8. I used to play Quake and made some friends through it. Around 15 years ago, I moved to a state where one of these friends lived. When we met, the atmosphere felt a bit strange, but he offered that I could stay with him any time. We eventually lost touch, but then just last year, his relative contacted me out of the blue. She told me that my friend had often spoken fondly of me, using my old screen name, and had recently been killed by another one of our online friends he had invited to stay with him. It was ruled to be self-defense. She wanted to know what I knew about the killer, but unfortunately, all I could remember was his old screen name. Story 9. We had known each other for 4 to 5 years prior to our first meeting, and it was great. After I moved out of my parents' house and started university, we decided to meet up again and had just as much fun as we did the first time. He constantly introduced me to new things. We watched amazing films, played video games, and other fun activities. It was during this time that we started to develop feelings for each other. I finally mustered up the courage to come out to my parents, who were incredibly supportive and understanding. My stepdad was a bit taken aback, but eventually accepted it. I was overjoyed. One day, we decided to go out for lunch at a nearby sandwich place. I asked him if he wanted fries, to which he replied no. As soon as the food was served, he helped himself to my fries. It was then that I realized that I had been taken for granted. Story 10. My husband and I had a unique opportunity to meet a guy we'd been playing Dungeons & Dragons with online. We took him in during his time of need, got him a job, and even took care of his needs. However, Chris was ungrateful, rude to my kids, and spread lies about me behind my back. Looking back, I feel sorry for him. He's been alone ever since. Story 11. I met her through a shared passion for a certain band and their upcoming free concert. I decided to take a chance and posted on social media looking for someone to join me, and she replied. Unfortunately, all the tickets were gone by the time we got to booking them, but we kept chatting. At the time, I was still under the assumption that I was straight. When we first met, it was quite awkward, but we eventually shared our first kiss and started dating. It was a long-distance relationship, and I soon began to explore my sexuality. She, however, became increasingly insecure and controlling, always questioning if I still loved her. This just made me more confused and unsure, so there was some sense in her behavior. Eventually, we broke up and blocked each other. It was a typical consequence of two teenagers in their first relationship, and I regret it greatly. We were both at fault, and I learned a valuable lesson. Story 12. I flew to Arizona to meet a buddy I had made on Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. As soon as I arrived, he threw a little soiree for me and all our friends, who were outside drinking and smoking. When the party died down, we decided to move into the living room and play Xbox. The room was quite dark, so we could barely see anything apart from the glare of the TV screen. I plopped down on their couch and felt quite uncomfortable, so I kept wiggling around trying to get comfortable. I eventually got up to take a look and was shocked to find that I'd been trying to settle down onto a 90-year-old's face. We quickly ran back outside, and I knew that my life would never be the same again. Story 13. After meeting a group of people on a movie website and becoming close to one particular guy, my wife and I became Facebook friends with him. We knew he was HIV positive, but thought it was under control. So when we heard he was hospitalized, we decided to give him a call. We had a wonderful conversation, shared some funny stories, and even made some silly inside jokes. After about 15 minutes, his nurse let us know he needed rest, so we said goodbye and promised to talk soon. A few days later, he messaged us to express his gratitude for the call and ended the message with, "I love you." Little did we know that he had just been diagnosed with cancer 2 weeks prior and was given the choice to extend his life by 6 months through radiation therapy or accept his fate. He chose the latter. Although I regret not being able to see him in person, I will always cherish our last conversation and be thankful that I was able to tell him, "I love you."